Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, part of the Cover One Sports Network. Now, we know, you guys, when you turn into the film room, you're used to, usually Eric and I make some kind of joke about Kendall being a traitor or looking too young or backstabbing us, but there's not going to be any of that tonight. We are all business. Normally, we're like 95% business here on the film room. Tonight, it's 99.8% because we have a tremendous guest tonight here in the Cover One Film Room. Someone who, Erik, back when this show was just you and I, we were kind of on the warpath in defending our guests tonight against anyone and everyone because they didn't understand the technicality and just how complicated things were up front. And so this is kind of like a full circle of awesomeness for you and I. And I know you're excited. I'm excited. Kendall's excited. Everybody in the chat is excited. You're seeing a ton of comments already line up because our guest tonight is Buffalo Bills starting center Mitch Morse. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us, being here. I'm going to give a quiet clap so it doesn't get into the mic, but thank you so much for being here. We're pumped.
Gentlemen, I have always appreciated your support. You've always been very gracious to me and my family, and I appreciate you having me on.
No, yeah, we're pumped. It's funny. Erik and I were talking offline before you got in, because before you were on Twitter, whenever we post something positive about you, your wife would retweet it. Like, that's Mitch Morse's wife. She just appreciated that. And it was those little bits and things there. So it's really cool to see things come full circle. And, speaking of your wife and the family, you had a very, exhausting weekend. You just came back from vacation.
Dog.
So we appreciate you taking, if you want, tell the people how you feeling right now.
Yeah, vent a little. And how, I don't know, anyone who's got kids, right? Like we were talking a little bit earlier. With the house we were in had 3 kids under 3, and the vacation is not so much a vacation as it is just a corral of the kids. and so we're so routine on schedules and stuff, and it was just a free for all, manic state, and we paid for it, but the kids had a blast, and that's in the end, as a parent, that's all you do it for.
Yeah. What's more exhausting, that weekend or the grind of an NFL season? Are they close?
Ooh. Oh, Jesus.
Wow, I can't believe you even have to think about it. This is wild.
This weekend, dude, that weekend was crazy. This weekend was nuts. My wife and I were shell-shocked a little bit. But, if that was a 6-month span, I would have died. So it was no, it was good. No, of course. I would say that weekend was more mental straining, whereas the season takes a physical beating.
Definitely.
Although my daughter did hit me a few times, which was unsettling. But we adapt and adjust.
No, and you're used to that. You're used to getting hands to the face and right in the chest and getting popped. I guess the life of being in the trenches. It's just unfortunate you got to if you're in the trenches on the field, and now you're in the trenches off the field.
I let my guard down, and then I get smacked right in the nose, dude.
You can't do that. You got to head on a swivel. The awareness is, and that as a center, everything, what you need to do, watch the tape of this weekend, study it, find your daughter's weaknesses, and then come back stronger.
No, it's that's one of those games where you just move on, you scratch it. It's like a blowout loss. You're like, nothing. We're gonna watch this. Let's just start up. No,
nothing. Forget it. We're on to next week. We're on to next week, and everybody's asking you about it. Oh, well, what are your thoughts? No, we're on to next week. We're on to the next vacation.
It's an anomaly, dude.
No, we appreciate you joining us tonight, Mitch. We really do. There's a lot of people in the comments saying the same thing, man. We wanted to obviously talk some ball with you. As Anthony said, we've been trying for a good time since you've been on Twitter to get you on the show, and we got you now in the off season. We appreciate you joining us, coming off of vacation, just getting back today. So we wanted to talk about your technique, and obviously Aaron Kromer's now in the building, a new O-line coach. You haven't had to deal with something like that in a few years, and your presser a couple of weeks ago had mentioned, learning new technique and kind of forgetting the old stuff, right? And we want to kind of get your thoughts on that, not just with the film, but just off the top, what is so different about Aaron Kromer's technique versus, say, Bobby Johnson or Andy Heck, who I believe was your OC coach in Kansas City as well, right? Who's another phenomenal offensive line coach.
Yeah, it's almost an embarrassment of riches in a few departments in my my tenure as a player in the NFL. Like you said, Coach Heck really got me and molded me into the person, the player, and with the habits and stuff like that. It's an excellent O-line coach. It's done at a high level. Coach Johnson, completely different coach than Coach Heck, and that doesn't make him a bad coach at all. A brilliant coach. and a coach, and I think we look down 20 years from now is going to be one of those guys. And it was kind of fun to be there at the infancy of his coaching career. We're all kind of working together to figure out where we were as a team, and at the same time, him figuring out who he wanted to be as a coach. And that's not a bad thing. It's just the nature of the gig. And I think he had some really good moments, and he really gave us an opportunity to excel at times, and most of the time, for that matter. Just a completely different guy. And then Coach Kromer comes in different than all three of those dudes. So I would say, with my first two coaches, they gave you a bunch of different tools, all that stuff. I'm trying to word this the right way, because every O-line coach is so different, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's just like you can't just, it's not one size fits all kind of thing. I was just very fortunate to have the coaches I did when I had them, right? So Coach Heck taught me how to practice, taught me how to put in, the time and the preparation. Coach Johnson kind of challenged me to be more vocal, kind of gave me the keys to the car, really challenged me to, be the kind of person that was uncomfortable for me at times, but was kind of the necessary step for me as a professional. And now we're still in the infancy of Coach Kromer. So we're all trying to figure him out. He's trying to figure us out, but it's exciting. I think the great coaches find what each person can do the best and have them put in positions to do that at the most frequently, right? Every coach does that. And, I think what Kromer is going to do is understand that physiologically, like I've said before, people are just not built the same.
Right.
Like maybe I can't bend the way Dion does, or, Cody, or all this stuff. It's just certain things. So he understands that and goes from there. And I think I could probably answer this question better for you in a year.
Right.
We're still trying to figure it out.
Sure.
It's which is kind of one of those things that it's a little bit, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's a little daunting, because we do have these expectations for where we want to be, what kind of offensive line we want to be. And we're all trying to gel together, and it's a whole new cast of characters for the most part. So it makes it fun, but also it makes it, the sense of urgency is an all-time high.
That definitely makes sense. I actually want to go back to the early portions of your career, what you were talking about with Coach Heck there in KC, but not necessarily the O-line play specifically. I wanted to ask, how important is the connection between quarterback and center? And specifically, how much influence did you think Alex Smith had on the early development for your career in the league?
Oh, Alex Smith. I owe him a lot, as just more so for patience than anything, right? He had a rookie center come in who hadn't played center since his sophomore year of college. And, he's year 11, year 12, an offense that he's been at the helm of for 3 or 4 years, and they have potency and they have expectations, and now they have, a young dude come in who's, super anxious to do his best, but at the same time is done though deadly. So just trying to, he was just so patient. And I remember there was one day it was just in a walkthrough, right? It was on air, and I was having a really tough time snapping the ball under center. I botched like 4 of them, and he was just very patient with me. And it's one of those days, and no one else, it's like, Mitch, come on, let's get this going. Everyone else was a little bit anxious with me, and Alex was the utmost pro. And I think that's just what, he was a professional through and through, and one ferocious competitor. He's a good dude, great guy.
Yeah, he's one of those guys I think just seems from our perspective like just has the respect of everyone in the league at all times. So just the kind of pro that he is. And now you're here in Buffalo working with Josh Allen, and you guys are building that relationship. And something we've talked about throughout this entire offseason on this show as well has been a lot of the talk of how defenses on the back end have started to defend you guys on offense this past year, maybe going into this year, more like too high looks and light boxes and so on and so forth. But a lot of that talk is usually, again, on the back end, what secondaries are doing and from a coverage perspective. And the back end is always tied into the front. last year, in that 2021 season, was there anything different that, you guys noticed in how fronts or defenses were attacking you guys up front, because all the love and the shine gets to the back end and it's all more split high safeties and more zone. But was there anything up front that you felt like teams came back, after how explosive you guys were in 2020, that defenses came back, were like, no, this is what we're going to do differently up front to attack this team?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, like you said, I think the back end was definitely more of a, oh man, how do I say this? I mean, for the most part, like you said, our explosive players are not our offensive linemen, right? And we have that's just what it is.
Call a spade a spade.
You call a spade a spade, and that's great, and that's what gets teams where they need to go, right? So they took care of what they thought was the potency of the offense, which was the running backs, the receivers, and Josh. And then they said, all right, well, now it's your turn, the guys up front, we're going to call your bluff, right? You run the ball in a 6-man box and go for it. So I don't think we did a good enough job of that. And then in the pass game, I think twists, like every team, stunts, games, getting guys on different levels, all that stuff, creating as much just kind of chaos in the pocket, but at the same time understanding who the quarterback was, right? So maybe it wasn't the best to flush him out. So doing certain things to keep him off his spot, though. So, for us, it was just being we understood what runs worked for us. It was just executing those and maybe putting us in positions to execute those at the highest level. Because every team I've been on, one run scheme the next year is usually not the run scheme that's the most explosive, right? I was just in Kansas City. I think we were an inside zone team, then an outside zone team, then a gap team. I mean, year after year after year, it wasn't like, and everyone wondered why the hell we couldn't do it, because we had done it the year before, and it's little nuances, it's change of personnel, it's how the teams are combating that. It is what it is.
And you mentioned something within that, and what you said previously to Kendall's question about when you were having that tough time in Kansas City, having just a rough day against air, and something that we love that Coach Kromer instills. We showed a couple clips from one of his clinics and teachings here on the film room several weeks ago, and he talked about instilling that muscle memory, something you spoke about earlier in this episode, that muscle memory. So even when you have OTAs and these practices where there is no contact and you're just working against air, he wants you guys to kick air's ass and build that muscle memory and build that repetition. So that way, if you can do it against air and you build that muscle memory and repetition, once you get into the game or once you're in full contact practices and you're actually working against another player, you're able to transition with that and translate to that. And how important do you think that is for kind of setting that initial base level fundamental technique piece before you really, start to take the training wheels off and go full tilt?
Yeah, I think it's paramount, right? I think muscle memory is the core to this game. And because, when you're thinking on the football field in general, especially at this level, you're already kind of in the negatives, right? So, in repetition, excuse me, I'm fighting off a burp, and it's just really weird.
No, you're good.
It's wild. It's in that weird in between feeling. So if it just rips one,
let it rip.
Me.
Let it rip.
And the Holy Spirit might come out here soon. So it's just one of those things, like I said, repetition over and over again, like snapping a football, like learning how to snap. It's not so much just like there's technique. It's just you got to do it thousands and thousands of times and then do it. So anytime you can, every coach wants to say, let's steal reps, whether it's in a walkthrough or stuff. There's something to that. Like if you're doing a walkthrough, you do it even if it's not full speed. Do the right technique, because when you go into a game, when the shots are fired, when the adrenaline's kicked on, you don't have time to think, you have to react. You're going to go to stuff that you've practiced before. And if you have, excuse my language, you have dog shit practices. If you don't have the right kind of, if you're just not doing the right footwork here and there, it'll catch up with you. So, yeah, it's something that kind of looks silly at times, and it's just like, well, it's this is like peewee football stuff. Well, it's because that even here we got to practice the same stuff over and over again, because it's easier to lose technique than gain it, in my opinion. And you go from there.
I'm going to tell you right now, that was a tremendous quote, Eric. I'm writing down the timestamp. That's a promo for this episode. It's that loose technique piece.
It's like a diet, dude. It's like a diet, right? You eat healthy for 3 months and then you just go crazy on a 4th of July weekend with your kids for 3 days and you're in the bag. You're in the bag, dude. It's terrible.
Right. And you had talked about earlier how, coaches have their own ways when it comes to teaching things. And I mean, any great coach is a really good teacher. And that's what's so important about bringing Kromer in now, like him being able to teach all of you guys as a unit, but also, as you said, kind of maximizing your strengths and things that you do well. And it does start in OTAs. And I know you guys had that a couple weeks ago. And the clip we're going to tee up right now is, again, Ant kind of talked about it. It's Kromer from 2015, 2016, talking at the Cool Clinic with all the other offensive line coaches a few years back, and just how he was maximizing that time to teach versus air, not even versus bags, and how, focusing on the technique and the movement itself is super important.
All I'm doing here is trying to illustrate that there's a progression to teaching. So when you look at this, watch this for a second. Look at this. We are kicking air's ass, correct? All right. But there's a progression. So you're looking at the left side of the line. You're saying that the left guard, the center and the guard are working together. The tackle's working by himself, but we're not allowed to go against each other for a certain period of time. So what we figured out is this is the best thing that could have happened to us, because what you find is when you go out to do something and there's resistance, all right, all you're worried about is fighting that resistance. So if you're holding a shield, then all I'm concerned about is hitting this shield and what's happening with this shield. And I don't want that. I don't want that. I want them to feel in their body what the movement is going to be before they get to the shield and then get to the real human. Okay, so that's where our thought process is. That's where this stuff on air. We do everything on air before we do it on bags, and then we go to real humans. So you don't have to worry about resistance. You can create muscle memory, movement skills, shooting your hands fast, getting your feet in the ground, whatever you're trying to get done, you can create that on air first. So I'm going to show you before each thing, hey man, this is how it looks on air. Here's a double team between the center and the left guard when the guard's covered.
I could watch that every time he says real humans, like in that progression, like the air, the bags, real humans, it gets me every time. And, this is the Cover One Film Room. And Mitch, you have been very gracious to be here in general and also to break some clips down with us, which, you told us you don't like to do because you don't like watching yourself, which I feel you. I hate the sound of my voice and I don't like watching myself on video. So we're the same, you and I. But, in that clip we showed from Coach Kromer, he talked a lot about movement skills and he talked a lot about technique. And that's something, we're not just saying it because you're here. That's something that we've broken down a lot with regards to your game because of how good your movement skills are and how sound your technique is and also how heady of a player you are. And so, Eric's got some clips queued up right now that kind of showcase that, that we'd love for you to, dive in and talk about.
Yeah, Mitch, for the next few plays, I want you to kind of walk us through, your mindset, your process once you get up to the line of scrimmage. On this play, you have 5 offensive linemen and a back possibly in protection. And you have a guy head up over you. And one thing Aaron Kromer talks about is hands. It's one of the things he teaches the most, and, hand leverage, positional leverage. And obviously as a center, a lot of times, especially when you play the Patriots, you got to have a guy right up over the top of you, and they're trying to get into you quickly, especially with how tall you are. And one of the ways to defend that is with your hands. So kind of walk us through this play as I let it roll and how you're able to chop this guy down and help out John Feliciano.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a 5-man front, and as a center, I absolutely hate, and I think all centers can attest to this, when you have a protection and a guy like Adam Butler here, who's really good at this.
Super underrated too.
One of the most underrated D linemen in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's great. Just getting penetration and then not even so much trying to get to the quarterback, but then picking the guy next to you, right? So as an offensive lineman and the interior guys, you want to stay on the same plane, right? You want to stay on the same depth, and you also don't want to open your hips. And I think he does a great job of trying to get both of those. So for a lot of offensive linemen, you try to shoot that offhand, or as a center, you try to shoot that offhand because one hand's already, it's already got something going on with snapping the ball right. So that left hand. So the only problem I would try to redo is that that left leg goes up, and what that does is it spreads the feet out, right? So what happens is if you spread the feet out like that, you have no base of power, and the only thing you can do to move is to open up your hips rather than to take a step, right? So this actually worked out. It could have been a disaster, but it worked out all right. So what happens is a guy like this is really good with his hands, and like we had talked about before, with the pads and everything, everyone's got this little grip right here, and what happens is this is something that you don't want to do as your main thing all the time, because then you're getting an off-season pitch and you're going to be put into the quarterback. So this is just kind of something you got to go with the feel as the game goes on. There it goes. And there goes the burp. And that was great.
Just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time. So with that is you throw that left hand, sometimes not even to really strike it, but to, because some guys have, this is going to be my counter when he throws his hand. So sometimes you can get that. But what happens a lot with that is then you become like that becomes your main thing, and then you actually don't strike with your hand. So if you feel that, you feel his weight maybe a little bit over himself, which is kind of unusual for Adam because he is one of the most underrated players in the league, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. You hit the arm down, kind of get him off. Now, what happens is it works well for me, but it also he technically does what he's supposed to do. He gets into the line of scrimmage and he gets me turned. What John beautifully does is hold and not get called for it.
Yeah.
And I gave him the biggest high five. It was a beautiful thing. He's one of my best dude. It's a great dude, great dude. But he bailed me out here, and then actually the guy was already going backwards and tripped up on John. So it looks a lot cooler than it actually. It looks a lot cooler than it actually was. And then it was like one of those backyard third grade things where the guy stands behind him and you kind of slightly push him, he falls down. It made it look a lot cooler than it came out to. But what the ultimate thing is, if you sometimes feel the defender with his weight over him and that one hand out, if he strikes it, now he's definitely gonna have some power underneath it. But if you can get the sweet spot, you can get him on the ground and then go from there.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'll just add before we go to the next clip is, this is something Erik would attest to this. This is something the Patriots love to do, that little pick play. If you watched a Matt Patricia clinic from a few years ago, they practice this stuff with Dante Hightower, picking off guys and running that. And they used to do it to Erik Wood all the time. Yeah. But it's something that, yes, it's in the Patriots playbook. Every coach that's been through there has run that. So the next play we're going to go back to is not Mitch Morse right there, but we're going to go to, let's see here, snap stab versus the Rams. So this, Kendall, you can break this one down. 3rd and 22 situation here.
Yeah, so obviously critical situation, critical point in this game. Obviously, we all remember the comeback here, but it's interesting on this play, similar to the last one, you have someone lined up right in front of you, and you have to combat and kind of mitigate for that type of player right in front of you. And you just talked about how difficult it is for all centers when you got someone lined up at zero tech. You're kind of anxious when you're snapping that ball, and you got to think about, I got to get up quickly and I got to get into this man. But how do you do it specifically with your hand usage against someone of this nature like Michael Brockers on this play?
Yeah, another great underrated defensive lineman, in my opinion. You have a longer guy who has you would think a three-way go. Of course, he's running a stunt here. It's another one of those things where you throw that offhand, right, either to instigate his counter or to maybe get him off, because in the end you ultimately buy you time.
Yeah.
Now the one thing you don't want to do is when you do this, not be using, not have a plan with this right, whether it's to, you technically don't want to clamp out because then you have no power, right? You're not going to push a car with your elbow out, or you want to push a car with your elbow in. Mm-hmm. But he'd been really good, and he'd been giving me the business with that long arm. And I thought if there's a chance, this might be it. So it worked out well. And then I had some friendly fire in the back, but it really is just like you said, having that hand going, working for you, even if it's your offhand, and then having a counter, like, because the defensive line is going to have a counter, and you can't have this as your first pitch, right? Like, this is something you can't throw all the time, because then guys are going to get you in trouble.
I love that you say that too. Before we go to the next play, because Eric Wood was on Bussin' with the Boys with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. He talked about Kromer and some of the, ninja tricks that he teaches, whether it's the slingshot, which you actually pulled in this game against Aaron Donald. Those little tricks of the trade, not your fastball, not your go-to, but having that changeup in your back pocket to problem solve. That's what offensive line play is all about. It's having solutions to the problem. It's not always going to be pretty, but getting that job done, of staying obviously in between the pass rusher and the quarterback. I mean, having that changeup and a move like this versus guys that are, again, zero techs right on you quickly and trying to take advantage, especially to your snap hand, as you said, like that is a good tool to have in the toolbox.
Yeah, Eric, like you said, pal, it's something you don't want to rely on. But when you're put in that position, is there something I can use? Is there anything I can do? And the great coaches always give you tools, but they also say, now this is something you can use. Don't make me regret it. Right. So use it when it's applicable. Don't use it every damn play.
Mitch, quick question for you before we, again, another question before we get into the next clip. I guess for me, I've always thought of, I love the baseball analogy there. And it's something I've always thought a lot when it comes to like offensive calls, defensive calls, and even from the defensive line perspective in terms of pass rushing moves and pass rush plan. But I guess I never really thought about it from an offensive lineman perspective. When you mentioned it there, like something like that move isn't like the pitch you can throw all the time or the first pitch you throw. How much does that come into play when you're prepping for the week or in game? Is there something like in the back of your mind that's like, okay, almost kind of like a pitch tracker where you're like, okay, last time on this third down, I used this move. Let me not go back to that again. Is there something where it's kind of like consciously in your mind, or does it just kind of go, happen as it happens?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not so much an offensive lineman as it is maybe a D lineman or something like that, right? Yeah. Where you set moves up, you do moves to set up other moves or something like that. Whereas offensive line, my technique that I'm going to use is 90% of the time going to work for most everything. It's just those outliers where you're like, oh, that move's different. Or that in this position, right? So like if Adam Butler lines up in a nose guard, he's going to play a little bit different than he lines up in a 3 technique or a shade. Different players, personnel, stuff like that. With this front, I understand what they're usually trying to do, or if or what this player likes to do. So not as much as you'd think. There definitely is something to it. Maybe it's more of the personnel you're facing and the blitz or the look they're throwing at you, knowing what's going to come from there, rather than just like, well, I punched with my left hand 3 times. It does happen every once in a while. Like you give them a good old school donkey punch right to the helmet. Right out there.
Eric would talk about that too. Yeah, he talked about that. Centers use that. Yeah.
Right.
Now for me, I have short arms, so like you've seen, for me to do that, I have to turn my shoulders, and when you turn your shoulders as an offensive lineman, you're dead in the water. So for me, I can't really do as much as I do just straight up 2-hand or 1 arm trying to get it in here. So there's definitely tricks and tools, but for me, I like to stick to what I know, and I'm going to use that technique 90% of the time.
Awesome. And that's a fantastic segue to the next clip that we've got here. Again, talking about that technique and talking about that processing piece. This was, Mitch, this was a game that myself and Erik, we focused on you a lot during this game because you kept executing these pop sets fantastically, to the point that kind of like the nickname within the Cover One group, kind of to play on the Michael Jackson Prince of Pop, we would call you the Prince of Pop, sets. And you were just crushing it here. And offline before we started the episode, you were breaking this down really well for us. So if you could kind of walk us through your kind of processing, as you're coming to line and what you're seeing here, what makes you key in to execute this pop set here? What do you see in the front? What do you see in the alignment that kind of indicates to you like, okay, this is what we prep for. This is the tendency. This is where my head's at. This is what I think I'm going to do based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I mean, to start off, every protection, and this is going to be basic football, right? Every protection has rules, and we had 1,000 protections. And at first, and especially this offense, it can be so much. But once you get that honed in, it really did cover everything. So you understand, like you said, you get the play call, you go from there, and then you kind of have, for me, like a pre-play script that I go between breaking the huddle and when the ball is snapped. whether it's reiterating the cadence, what's the important things for me to kind of get the guys set. What do I need to hear from the guys? All this stuff, and then you kind of go look through the defense. Well, at this certain look and this certain yardage, all this stuff, and then for here with the certain rules and certain things, it was a little bit of a gray area, but you could see that 54. I forget his name. Great linebacker, super quick dude.
Yeah,
like I said, this whole defense was fast as hell, and we couldn't have played him at a better time when the terrain was slippery.
Which was such a great point, like how that weather played into your hands and not to theirs, because they were such a fast, flowy defense, and they couldn't get this traction.
Totally right. So say this guy, I mean, he gets a full head of steam. He had to stop, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe nope, there he goes. So. The terrain definitely played a role in here, giving me a little bit extra time to get out there and maybe him not make a ferocious cut to put me on my back. But it's one of those things that now when you go out there, when you pop set, the coaches give you the keys to the car, right? But now you are responsible and you are the tackle now, and you have to set the depth, the width rather.
Yeah.
So you go here, you look at 54 is not relating to the A gap, right? Someone's got to take the A gap. So you got to think it's going to be a pirate son of Storks. Or, at least the D tackle is going to come and someone's going to come off the edge. So in this instance, in this protection, I made a call that said, all right, I'll take the widest guy, you two man up here. Okay. And then you kind of just go through a pre-play prayer that it all works out for you and that you don't get your franchise quarterback smacked. And, Josh did his thing and made a great throw and made me look a lot better than I actually am. So I'm thankful for all that.
And my question for you, Mitch, is, you talked about your checklist and everything. And, quarterbacks, one of the first things they do when they get to the line of scrimmage is they look at the safeties. Obviously, they're paying attention to that pre to post snap as that picture changes. Where are your eyes? Are you looking at calling out the front when you get up there? Like, where are your eyes in that process?
Yeah, you go through the front, right? Like that's part of the routine is you dictate the front what it is. And for me, honestly, especially where I'm at, it's hard to get past the front seven. It's not like you're down in that stance. I'm already at short arms, so I'm already way the hell down there in like this Saigon squat. My guts are pushing my lungs into my throat, and I'm trying to also look at what's going around. Like really getting past the tackles, besides seeing where like linebackers relating, or you can kind of see a safety, but it's hard to sometimes get the whole picture.
Right.
So what you can do is just relay information of what you see, and then the guy behind you has got the keys to the car in both regards to protection, overriding stuff, setting you up, all that stuff. So the dialogue is usually it's pretty crisp. It's also it's always kind of going. But in the end, if there's something he sees that I don't, and of course he has the green light to do whatever the hell he wants. But usually, the guys are giving me information, and then we're trying to relay that back there if he needs it. If not, less communication sometimes, and most of the times is better.
Yeah, and as Mitch said, one of the first things he was looking at was the linebacker, and you can see Aluakon 54. Look at his depth versus Deion Jones, and then again, where he's aligned. He's not, as Mitch said, he's not relaying to the A gap. So someone's got to be rushing in that gap. And as those two defensive linemen kind of slant inside here, and they're in man protection with Bates and Dawkins, they wash them down, and that allows Mitch to set the width. And they're almost, as Mitch said earlier, usually the interior offensive line, the center and guards are setting the depth of the pocket, and the width is set by the tackles. Well, here it's reversed, and that's why this pop set and having this tool is, and this call and this protection is so cool to have, because this is something teams love to do against the Bills. They loved blitzing Josh Allen or rushing a guy off the edge from that nickel position. It's something that teams back in college when he was at Wyoming, they loved to do that, and he's had to get better at recognizing that. And that's awesome that they gave Mitch a tool like this to kind of overcome how defenses tend to attack the Bills offense, especially with these simulated pressures.
Yeah, that's a tremendous piece. And it was something that we noticed immediately. Erik, you noticed it, I think, by like the third quarter in this game, and we're already like posting things on Twitter about it. And then when we dove in, and, Mitch, in going back and really diving into the 2021 tape, as the season progressed, really from kind of halftime of the Tampa Bay game on, so like week 14 through the divisional round against Kansas City, we noticed more of a concerted effort, it seemed, in more gap runs and the success of really the offensive line and you guys having these runs that were just seemed like a lot of pin and pull runs where you coincidentally were that puller a lot of times, taking advantage of your ability in space, your movement ability, and just how effective you were. Was that kind of effort towards more gap runs and towards more pin and pulls and that focal point of, getting, you and Bates more as those pullers and out in space, was that more of a game planny type of thing that was just coincidental week after week, or was there kind of more of a concerted effort towards the back end of the year of you guys to maybe change in your philosophy a little bit in order to have that successful pivot in the run game?
Question: did John just give you guys $50?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a huge supporter of Cover One. He's been there for many years. He tunes into all of our shows. We appreciate it. And I'm glad you mentioned it's a good segue, because anytime someone donates and super chats us, we have to interrupt the show, right, Anthony? And kind of read this out loud.
1,000%. Yeah. And Mitch, for, just so you know, so John lives in Miami. He's a diehard Bills fan, and he's always reporting from enemy territory. He normally says, so yeah, he's a huge supporter of ours. And John, thank you so much for super chatting the donation. And John says, Mitch Morse, thank you. Love watching you play. You showed up and Buffalo started winning. Blessings to you and your family. And there you go. Old man Bills fan behind enemy lines on Miami Beach. Hashtag Bills Mafia. Oh, and then some kind words for us. Also Cover One guys. Epic show as ever. Gracias.
John seems like a real dude.
He's awesome. He is.
We love you, pal.
Yeah.
Run off. $50 is no joke either, John. Let's go.
He's like he brings the heat when it comes to the donations, and even without the donations, like comments, like he's just like he's a really good dude and smart dude as well. Yeah, as real as they come.
No, you guys always have good guys commenting on your stuff. That's good. Sorry, but your question, can you give me Cliff Notes again? John threw me off for a week.
Yeah, just, I'm super handsome, and I wanted to know your thoughts in that and just supporting me. Yeah. No,
more beard, pal.
Dude, all jokes aside, you came on. My beard game sucks, and then
no. All beards are beautiful, pal.
No, they're not like you got like a real strong beard. Erik doesn't rock one.
I can't do
Kendall.
it. Yeah,
so I can come away decently.
If you have a chin line, in my opinion, you don't need one. The Morses notoriously don't have chins. I mean, mine is like, dude, mine. So that's my chin right there. You see that? That's wildly bad, right? So you have to have. You're welcome, John. And then you got to go to the beard, but. Go on. I'm sorry. I know it was a great conversation.
No, you're great. Erik has that superhero jawline, and I wish I had more beard to cover up for me as well. But just more of seeing more pin and pull runs, more gap focus runs towards the back end of the year. Was that just kind of was a word you used earlier? Was that more game planning, just coincidental as each game kind of trickled onto the back end of the year? Or was that more of a concerted effort and focus from the offense in terms of game plan holistically to really give you guys a pivot with the run game?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think there's a bunch of variables that kind of play into that, right? So, a few of us like to pretend like we can run in space. Now, the thing about that though is, right, so you have these guys and you just like, wow, look at them have a full head of steam. Well, that's because dudes on the outside are making sure that I have a place to run. So the shout out to those guys putting themselves in positions, usually dudes who don't like to block, throwing their bodies around and giving us an opportunity to pin and pull, right? So really appreciate the guys for doing that. Like you said, it's a game plan thing. We always have a list of 15, 16 runs, usually of different varieties. It's not like we're all only going to have these kind of runs, only going to have gap or zone schemes. So you're going to have these. And then you have different looks, different yardages, like, third downs, whatever. And if you get yards, I mean, not to put too much of an onus on the first time you run a play, right? But if you have a play that hits, play callers are usually more likely to call that play again.
Okay.
It was kind of a happenstance. Like those were the plays that were hitting at those times, and we didn't hate it, and we just took off in space and went for it. So, we really do enjoy those plays. We enjoy any play that gets the running back with some space or letting them show off their abilities, which we have guys who can really play football well. And it just happened to be those. So to answer your questions, there's a lot of dependent variables.
Right. Yeah, totally. And so at the end of 2020, I know Anthony and I in the offseason, we did a breakdown a full season breakdown on like the different run concepts that you guys were running at end of 2020. There was a lot more zone runs as opposed to this year, where it kind of ended more on the gap runs and the pin and pull hybrid type runs. But when you mentioned technique the other day and that presser, it sounded like you were kind of alluding to the run game and some of the techniques that Kromer's teaching in that regard. So what style is Kromer going to bring as far as the run game goes? I mean, obviously you guys haven't put on pads or anything like that, but you've done some installs. Like, what type of brand of football is he going to bring, especially when we're talking the ground game? Because it's something that Aaron Kromer, when he was with the Bills a few years ago, 2015, 2016, they were heavy in the pin and pulls. They were heavy into gap. Obviously with the Rams, he ran a ton of outside zone and zone run plays. So what can we expect from Kromer and the Bills offense when it comes to the run game?
Yeah, I think that, I just want to be in y'all's seats too, because I'm not quite sure either. And I know that's a shitty answer, but it's the truth. It's, like you said, you boasted his resume out there, right? Like, he's got the credentials to use what the team has to its advantages, right? Like, so you had the pin and pulls in 15, 16 possibly, and Rams, heavy outside zone, Todd Gurley, just an absolute stud. So it will really be just kind of figuring out, once we put those pads on, what this team's identity truly is in regards to his scheme of runs. Right? There's different rules that he has. There's different techniques that he's using. It'd be painstaking to go through every one of them, right?
Oh, we'd love it.
And
obviously we didn't.
By all means.
And I can't be giving all that.
I know.
Also true. Yeah.
And I can't. You guys are too good at your jobs. You guys. Although there was something, like, I was watching a breakdown a few months ago, and when you had something like this call means this. I'm like, how the hell?
Oh, dude.
Does he know that shit?
I don't know.
So I can't.
That's a good question. I don't know who runs the handle or anything.
Yeah,
but...
no, yeah, right.
Weird.
All right, so but it really is just it'll be exciting, and like that's what I said before. Every offensive line coach is different. His ideas are different. What he's getting out of guys is interesting, and I really think it's not going to be like it's not like we're going to get this immediately. We're going to have some growing pains.
Absolutely.
And now I'm not expecting to do poorly, but I'm just saying, like, there's going to be a moment where it clicks. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. We're going to work like hell so that it is sooner rather than later. We got a group of professionals that take pride in their job and putting this offense in the best position we can. But where he's learning us as much as we're learning him. So
sure,
it's a go with the flow there.
All right, man. Last question from me and last question from us. Obviously, thanks for being here. This was awesome.
This
Great
fun.
Learning experience for me, you guys, and obviously everyone in the chat. But I wanted to ask you a little bit less about you, and actually an opportunity to kind of praise a teammate or maybe throw him under the bus. We'll see.
Love this. All right, go on.
I'm curious. Did you personally notice a positive spark to the offensive line play in that week 14-ish area, like Ant was talking about, when Ryan Bates was put into the starting lineup? Because from the outside looking in, there were a lot of things that seemed to trend more positively once he was put in the starting lineup, and we saw more gap runs. We saw more athleticism on the offensive line as a whole. There were a lot of things that seemed to change. Did you see a positive impact, a positive spark? And if you did, why do you think that was?
Well, I think you kind of go back with starting the broader picture, and this is going to be kind of out of left field, but like you said, we had an idea of what it is. It's amazing to kind of see people's opinions and then actually be in the locker room where the stuff's going down. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, especially not you guys, because you guys don't do that, right? But it's one of those things that some people sniff around things that just don't have any validity, or it's just kind of the wrong. Maybe some dudes are going through some stuff, all that stuff, right? That's just granted.
Yeah.
With guys coming in and out, COVID threw a wrench. And things, injuries throw a wrench in things. I've had plenty of seasons where injury, either took me out of a groove or put me into one weirdly. It's just kind of like it really is just kind of how the waves are going in regards to an offensive line.
Yeah.
Bates came in admirably, and in a time where he wasn't expecting to come in, filled a position and took off with it. And and it was unfortunate because one of my best friends, Ike, gave that vacancy up because he had a devastating Achilles injury. And then you have a guy like John, who's a consummate professional, guy who's played a lot of football. He's fiery, gives his opinion, but he's boisterous at times, right? That's what we love about him.
Yeah.
He misses time, I think, with the calf, right? And then the offense kind of catches fire, and it's not because of the absence of John. It's just what happens. And then you have a guy like that who is a great teammate, but also a damn competitive dude who wants to come in and play ball. And at the time, Bates comes in, and all the guys rally around him, even if it's not the thing they wanted to see, and that's what made this group a special one. And he goes out and he just plays good football, complimentary, knows his stuff. A guy who usually you say the more positions you play, the less money you get, right? Because, but
really.
Bates is one of those dudes who could go in any position, and he was just like, "You need to be in this one." And he's like, "Cool," and ran with it and earned the right to have that as his job to lose. So and he went from there.
Awesome insight on Bates' addition and just really everything. I got to stop, before we wrap up here. We got another. Mitch, you're fantastic for us. People just seem to want to give us money while you're here. So anytime you want to,
man.
It's a good time. Thank you very much, Erik, for your super chat and the donation. And, Mitch, you got another positive comment here. Shocker. Erik says he just got out of work, but he had to say what's up to everyone, and nobody pulls like Mitch.
Beautiful thing. Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I said, dude, guys on the outside taking care of me, though. So it takes me, as I get older, I can still get to the same top speed. It just takes me about 8 or 9 more steps.
A little longer to ramp it up.
A little bigger runway.
Dude, someone sent me some film from back in the day. I had I saw a picture of my first ever preseason game, and I had just tape on my hand, no glove, and a little bit of tape. And now I'm like sponsored by Breg. Like I got the glove, the elbow brace that goes up to my elbow. It's amazing what happens. You still have it somewhere in there. You just can't get it as often, and it takes a lot longer to get there. But the guys give me an opportunity to rev the engine and start the car, so I appreciate it.
No, yeah, you as we said in the intro to this, you are someone that we've appreciated for a while, and it's really nice to see Bills Mafia collectively now kind of falling in line, so to speak, and really, recognizing.
No, you know what, dude? It's a beautiful thing. That's why sports are great. Everyone's got their opinions, pal, but I appreciate the guys coming around a little bit.
Yeah, and that's also part of what makes it like, you talking earlier about like kind of the chess match of it all. That's what makes everything with football and sports in general so tough. Like that evaluation process, the game planning piece, you can show 10 people the same clip or same thing, and you might get a timeout.
Wow.
Sorry, Mitch, $100 this time. From J-Bo, who says, so excited to see how far Cover One has come. Congrats, Erik and the Cover One team, and appreciate you, Mitch.
That's awesome.
Dude, look at those sunglasses, though.
J-Bo, awesome. he's good. We hope you're doing well, too, J-Bo. He's another guy. So J-Bo, Erik, John, they're part of our premium Slack channel. They're our premium members. We have special content for premium members, and these guys have been supporters from day one. They're always in the Slack channel, our little community that we built, talking ball with us all day. And J-Bo, man, we truly appreciate it.
You guys have earned the right, man. J-Bo's on something. Good job, man.
Thank you.
Good job. J-Bo, you're the man. Well done.
Oh, man, that's thank you to everybody for the super chat donations, and Mitch, thank you for the kind words for us. And just again, like for you being here, you're someone whose game we've appreciated, and everybody's kind of getting on that now. And just we know busy time with 4th of July holiday, and you guys having to man up against the kids, which you did. So we're glad that you've come
out of that. That's part of the gig, man. That's why you do it. It's why you do it. Honestly, as exhausting as it is, it's why you do it. And we'll see. I can't even inadvertently just rub the eyes.
Yeah, obviously just naturally kind of just it's just a natural. It's that muscle memory you've built.
Muscle memory.
All that working against air, and it just happens when you're in the moment.
Kicking air's ass.
That's exactly.
Man, I really appreciate it. Always
Thank you, Mitch.
Pleasure. Keep up the good work. Many more donations to come because of the quality work you guys put out. Thank you again.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, and this will do it for us here on this episode of the Cover One Film Room. As we wrap, thank you very much for everybody who joined us live, the super chats, the donations, the comments, the engagement, anything and everything. And also, again, one last final thank you to our guest of tonight. Huge thanks, shout out, claps, applause, flowers, whatever verbiage you want to use for the Buffalo Bills starting center, Mitch Morse, A1 on the field, A1 off it. Again, we appreciate you so much for dropping by and being awesome. And yeah, go Bills.
Very fortunate, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Take it easy, Moy. Take it easy.
See you guys.